Hello and welcome back to the County Chat channel. Today we are doing our update show for the County Championship Division 1. So we've been doing it every 2 weeks, well roughly, given how the County Championship sort of schedule works out. But we've got to sort of game week 6 has just finished. So we're on to our third of these update shows. If you don't know how it goes, we kind of go through, as you can imagine, the sort of results look over of the last couple of weeks, so sort of any general news stories that have been happening around the county cricket game. We also then do a sort of standout team for the divisions, and then standout players, batters, all-rounders and bowlers. And then we finish with my favourite bit, the forming of the County Chat 12, the kind of all-star team that we kind of roll through the season. And I think, just an enjoyable little update show for us county cricket lovers out there in and around the country. So without further ado, we'll get kicked off into, as I sort of say, the general news element of the show, where we kind of get into just the things that have happened in Division 1. And I think there's probably one major story to talk about from this sort of last 2 to 3 weeks, say basically May in essence. And that is the shock Red Bull retirement of Liam Dawson. Liam Dawson is someone I've spoken about a lot of this County Chat channel. Was in the build-up to the Ashes. He was kind of my pick to go as a spinner down to Australia. But yeah, he is kind of out of nowhere, I think, for a lot of people. He's retired from Hampshire cricket and Red Bull cricket in general. A real shame in a sense, but I think it's a sign of the kind of times in a sense, and also a sign of, where Liam Dawson's at as his career. I was talking to some like-minded cricket fellows the other day, and we were talking about it, and you go, he's taken about 300 first-class wickets, scored about 10,000 first-class runs. I mean, he's had 2 successful first-class careers, if you will, as both a batter and a bowler. I mean, that's kind of the nature of being an all-rounder, I get, but that's the kind of quality of player that we're talking about here for Hampshire. I think the timing of it is maybe the only thing which I guess raises eyebrows. I think maybe if, he had retired in the mid-season block or even a bit later on, or even just at the end of this season, whilst quietly saying to Hampshire, can you maybe not pick me for every Red Bull game? I'm kind of falling out of love of it and all of this stuff. But the timing of it was sort of straight after the England squad was announced, in which he was not in it again. And then also Hampshire are bottom of the table, and Hampshire are looking in real strife, unfortunately, for their county. And Liam Dawson, I don't want to say it paints him in a bad light, because I think he's done enough for Hampshire that he doesn't owe anyone anything, and he can do as he pleases. But I think I can imagine if you're a Hampshire fan, you'd find it tricky that you're kind of arguably your remaining club legend, because Ben Brown is a great player, but he's not been there for very long. But your remaining club legend now, James Vince, has moved on in Liam Dawson. And I guess you'd say Carl Abbott, but again, it's a kind of different thing when he's a kind of homegrown player, as Liam Dawson is. It's a tricky thing to take on the chin, I guess. Is that we're bottom of the table, we're looking pretty destined for Division 2 if nothing changes, because I mean it's looking pretty bleak for Hampshire, and you're arguably your best player at this point, other than, again, I would say Carl Abbott at this point, Liam Dawson retires. And again, I can totally understand it. He's just been a part of quite a successful T20 World Cup campaign. He's been doing a lot more things. He gets great opportunities to play franchise cricket around the world, and I'm sure he's missed out on a lot of that with the notion of trying to play Red Bull cricket for England and trying to continue just plugging away in the county championship. So, happy retirement to Liam Dawson. Thank you for everything you've done for county cricket in England. I've been a huge fan of his career from afar. That kind of jealous Sussex fan wishing that we had someone like Liam Dawson for years and years. But he is just a great cricketer and a great servant, as I say, to English cricket and county championship cricket. So yeah, sort of happy retirement and happy franchise T20 leagues, I guess, because he's in his mid-30s, and why shouldn't he for the next 5 to 10 years, 10 years, but probably 5 to 6 years, go around the world and earn a good amount of money? It's a totally understandable thing. But yeah, so that's the first bit of news, sort of Liam Dawson and his retirement. The kind of signing of Hampshire, being proactive though, and you can respect this, is they've signed, and I might, get this name wrong pronunciation-wise, but Delano Poitgater is a South African guy. Seems like a really good cricketer. His averages are sort of, pretty remarkable. And I think it's a good sign for Hampshire fans, I'm sure, that he isn't just, they haven't just basically done nothing in essence, and they have actually gone and signed a player to the caliber of Delano Poitgater, to try and say his name again. I'm just getting his stats up quickly, because I remember looking at them today and they were very impressive for a cricketer who I hadn't really heard much of. So kind of an all-round cricketer. Averages 43 with the bat, and 23 with the ball. So again, a very impressive rate, first class stats. Again, you know, I can't pretend I know a huge amount of South African red ball cricket, so I can't pretend if he's playing Division 2 there, Division 1 there, whatever's going on. But again, still incredibly impressive stats and a good all-round cricketer for Hampshire to have got in. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out, whether or not he's going to do enough, or I think he straight away has done pretty well in that first fixture. Again, Hampshire did lose it, unfortunately, and to skip ahead to sort of the results look over. But yeah, Hampshire fans, I guess, can be emboldened by the fact that their hierarchy, their leadership group have gone out and signed someone like him to try and basically replace him, because it was pretty much directly as soon as he retired, the announcement of Delano, point gaiter, kind of came out. So yeah, it's an interesting one for Hampshire. I also, going back to the timing of the Liam Dawson thing, it's also like, if he just waited till this block was over, he'd be retiring just as the Vitality Blast is starting. The County Champ is sort of fading away for a little bit now, and it'd kind of make a bit more sense. But he retired like at the start of this week, start of last week, sort of before this last round of fixtures happened. So he obviously wasn't available for this last round of fixtures. So again, all a bit weird. I don't know what was going on there. I'm not going to pretend I have any inside scoop or anything like that, but it's just an interesting timing thing, and whether or not anything will come from that. On to more general news, and maybe a bit more bright and general news and just a kind of funny cricket moment. Harry Brook getting 3 for the other day. I was playing a game in the content creators for the Content Creators Club on Sunday, and that was when it happened. And we'd kind of been, milling around, chatting away, and I just go on my phone, as I often do, check the scores, and see Harry Brook is bowling. Not only is he bowling, but he's taken 3 wickets, including Jamie Smith's second ball. To be fair to Jamie Smith, I've seen him get out to worse balls, I'll say that. It was actually a really good medium-paced ball, swung in, seamed away, took the top of his off stump. Kind of arguably at any level of cricket, we know jet batters getting out to sort of balls which you sort of shouldn't get out to. But in a way, you kind of look at that and you kind of go, he should have been on his front foot probably more, maybe, and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's a pretty good ball to get second up. And especially when you're being pretty sensitive, when your England teammate and vice captain is bowling at you, some medium pace in the sort of mid to low 60s as a test match wicketkeeper. I'm sure, like anyone, he was more worried about getting out than he was about scoring runs, and it proved that way. A really tough moment for Jamie Smith there, I think it's safe to say. And on to sort of some other news, and some really cool news, to be honest, and is Tom Norton, the Glamorgan teenager. He became the youngest, so he was a first-class debutant, which is great for him anyway, but then he became the youngest ever first-class debutant to take a hat-trick. And he bowled beautifully against Somerset. He reduced them to 32 for 6, or him and his teammates did. But yeah, Glamorgan have been kind of the story of the last few weeks. I think in Division 1, if you've been paying attention, they've kind of had a sort of mediocre to pretty good start to their season. For a promoted team, actually, mediocre would be harsh. I think they started their season well, and then in the last few games, they've flown up the table. They're now up in 3rd. As a Sussex fan, I must mention they would be 4th if Sussex didn't get a point deduction, but that's all by the by now. Glamorgan are in 3rd, and they're doing incredibly well. I mean, and this is coming from me. I can own this honestly. I had them finishing last this season, so I think just to give that as a bit of a leeway to show just how well they're doing is shout out to Glamorgan. Really happy for them. I think how their batting is put together. I think how they're led by Kieran Carson, and all of these things. Seems like they're just very combative. I think the signing of Ryan Hadley's been really good. Tim van der Hoogten, you kind of always know what you're going to get from. But a youngster like Tom Norton coming in, and he bowled well in that game. And sometimes as a young bowler who does well, do you just think, oh, is that just a sort of flash in the pan? But then he's bowled well sort of since then. So it's a really simple one in which you go, fair play. Glamorgan are looking great. And that was a really, really cool moment for Tom Norton. And he bowled beautifully that day. And he's bowled sort of beautifully ever since. He's just in a good moment as a cricketer, you'd have to say. But that kind of segues us on very nicely to the standout team in Division 1 over the sort of last 2 to 3 weeks, over the last 2 to 3 rounds, if you will. And it is Glamorgan for me. I think it's a really obvious pick. I think Glamorgan, one of the new promoted sides. They were some, and again, and I'm going purely off what I was guessing before the season, but they weren't a team that people were probably looking at and going, wow, Glamorgan are shaping up brilliantly. But they've gone and done in the last 3 weeks. They won by an innings down at Southampton against the struggling Hampshire side, but again, you've got to beat what's in front of you. And then they won an incredibly game in which Tom Norton took that hat-trick, incredibly close game against Somerset, a kind of local rival in essence, and won that game by 2 wickets, an incredibly close chase. And again, having been in a bad place, so again, that kind of keeping in the game and not just folding under pressure and all of those sort of things. And then against Warwickshire at Birmingham, so 2 of these games have been away games in the last 3 weeks. They were sort of in the driver's seat. And I think without rain, if either one team was going to win that game, it would have been Glamorgan. I mean, Warwickshire in the 4th innings were chasing 368 and were 100 for 2 when the game was concluded. So, you can take where you want to take it. But to me, Glamorgan have had a remarkably good and inconsistent last 3 weeks. They've taken themselves from sort of mid to lower table to kind of near the top of the table. And I think, all power to them. And I'm very happy to hold my hands up and say I got that one wrong, because I think how Glamorgan have shaped up, and as I say, the signings they've made, their overseas signings, and just how their young players have played. And I think that was the kind of key for Glamorgan. If you looked at their squad going into the season, there wasn't a huge amount of signings coming in, but there was a lot of young players getting given contracts and a lot of young players who they seemed to have a lot of faith in. And Tom Norton was one of them. And of course, from the last few years, you had Asa Tribe and Ben Kellaway, who were two real standout cricketers for the whole of the UK, really. So it's a bit of an interesting situation for Glamorgan. Not interesting situation. I use that phrase way too often. It's a brilliant situation for Glamorgan, simply put. They've put themselves in a great place, and they're a seriously well set up side by the looks of it. I'm a huge fan of Kieran Carson. I kind of always have been, and I think I maybe underestimated him as a captain, and I shouldn't have, because at the end of the day, they got promoted to the Division 1 with Sam Northeast as their captain, and now they have Kieran Carson, and they've gone on from strength to strength. I think it's safe to say I predicted the kind of wrong promoted team to have a really good impact in Division 1. Leicestershire, on the other hand, have not been doing as well as I kind of predicted them to, but Glamorgan, all power to them, having a brilliant start to their season. So yeah, great for them. Just briefly, we'll do a bit of a results look over. I realise I sort of accidentally skipped over that in my own script to talk about Glamorgan. But I guess in a sense we did do a bit of chatting about the results in that little bit there. So yeah, we'll sort of start from sort of May 1st. Sussex lost a very, very lost heavily in essence against Surrey. I think a poor declaration from Ollie Robinson there, and obviously Surrey made him pay with that 6-2-2 on a pretty good oval wicket. But again, it started incredibly green, so at the time it sort of seemed like a good declaration. So anyway, it's all by the by. Me being a Sussex fan, obviously know a lot more about that than other games. Glamorgan, as I mentioned just now, just hammered Hampshire down at Southampton, and again, I think it was a sign of the time to Hampshire how poorly, Glamorgan beating them is one thing, but just how bad that was at home was a real moment of going, oh, they do not look in good shape. Then Somerset, they lost a very competitive and close game down at Taunton to Yorkshire. I could be wrong, but I have a feeling this was a game where Bess and Root bowled very, very well in combination in that 4th innings. Yeah, Bess and Root they got 8 wickets between them for 109 between them in that 4th innings in a sort of tricky chase for Somerset, but yeah, they got beaten in a close game. They needed 260 in that last innings, and that 370 in their 3rd innings for Yorkshire was massive. Nottinghamshire beat Leicestershire fairly comfortably, as again, I mean, in a horrible way, kind of as Leicestershire had begun the season and how Notts are, as you'd kind of expect. They made them follow on after a big first innings score and then chased it very easily. On to the kind of round after that, Essex beat Hampshire in a pretty close game, but again, Hampshire just in the situation where their batting's just not taking them far enough into games, and their bowling, they have just too much reliance on Carl Abbott, and also a reliance on Sonny Baker, and they don't have enough bowling quite to kind of set themselves up. Anyway, Yorkshire, having had a great trip away to Somerset, then got sort of fundamentally hammered in that one innings. Every other innings, 147, 152, 171, were all pretty low. Just the Warwickshire second innings, 553 for 6 declared, and Warwickshire win by 377. Nottingham and Surrey were kind of the big game of that week, but it was just a no-brainer draw. It was a flat wicket, good batting teams. And yeah, not flat wicket, but it was just a wicket in which if you have a good batting teams that they were going to do well on, and they did, and it never looked like anything other than a draw in that Notts versus Surrey game. As I just mentioned, whilst talking about Glamorgan's brilliant victory at home against Somerset, won by 2 wickets, a really close game. And yeah, it was a really big moment for them. And then lastly, from that round, the sort of second round we're talking about, Sussex beat Leicestershire in a close game. It was well competitive. Leicestershire looked good at points, but again, Sussex just had a little bit too much for them. And it's all that depth. And I think it's those key moments that they talk about in 4-day cricket that Leicestershire have been faltering in. And speaking of, they lost the last round that we've just had. Leicestershire lost heavily to Essex, and they'd done really, really well. They batted first, scored 3-3-3. Then Essex scored 293. So you go, Leicestershire on top here. Then Essex bowl Leicestershire out for 60. So all of the first innings work they'd done falls apart very quickly. And it's just those key moments. And again, Essex are the sort of team where if you get on the back foot, they can skittle you out, especially at home. Cook, Porter, Snater, and now Mulder is a pretty formidable lineup if you then add in Simon Harmer as your spinner. So Essex are a really good team. And especially at home. So, I mean, Leicestershire have just been proven to just not quite be up to it in those key moments, and that's unfortunate. A rain-affected fixture down at Southampton. Again, I think Notts would have liked their chances to win that game, but rain was the eventual winner. Glamorgan and Warwickshire, as I mentioned, Glamorgan well on top in a game at Birmingham, and it's not been easy to win games at Birmingham, especially away from home, but they were kind of well on top, and it was only the rain that really saved Warwickshire. I think a draw still was very possible for Warwickshire, don't get me wrong. Bears fans, don't come at me for that, but I think Glamorgan, you would safe to say, were sort of driving that fixture. Yorkshire absolutely hammered Surrey at home. Bairstow got his first 100 as Yorkshire captain. Lyth got runs. Brooke, as I just mentioned, took that 3 for. So yeah, Yorkshire really put Surrey in the pipe, to be quite honest and frank about it. And then lastly, Somerset versus Sussex. I've been talking to Harry, the commentator at Somerset, through that content creator stuff, and we've been chatting on Monday, which was obviously yesterday, and just talking about how lucky Sussex got, to be totally clear. Somerset bat first, 5-2-6. Sussex bowled out for 2-5-3. Bearing in mind, one of our openers got 100 in that 2-5-3. Then get followed on 113 for 7. But luckily, there was no play. Luckily, I say this purely as a Sussex fan, there was no play after tea, and the rain very much came. Paul Farbrae said it best, that Somerset, Sussex didn't deserve a draw, Somerset deserved a win, and the rain was the winner within that kind of village cricket term, but the draw meant that that Sussex snuck away without their blushes, if you will. But very much a dominant sort of performance, if you will, from Somerset. Anyway, on to kind of standout players or play. It's standout players, isn't it? Because I choose a batter, a bowler, and an all-rounder from those last few weeks. And quite frankly, I think it was quite tricky to actually choose a batter. Was actually the one I struggled with most. I think there were some really good performances by bowlers, a really clear all-rounder in my opinion. But for me, the batting was the trickiest one. And I actually went with, and in a way, I regret it. I've gone with Ben Duckett. And Ben Duckett, he had a brilliant game against Surrey. He scored that 200 against Surrey. He's done superbly at sort of 3 for Notts. And I think he very much deserves it. And I think the reason I just wanted to give him his flowers, to use that phrase, but because he turned down the IPL, he played county cricket, and he scored buckets of runs. I think he scored 500 odd runs at this point, and I think it's sort of all power to him. And I mentioned it in the England squad reaction video I did, if you will, and I think he should get a lot of credit for the fact that he did what he's done. The other two people who I think give a little tip of the cap to, and I just mentioned one of them, was Kieran Carlson. Kieran Carlson's been a sort of number 4, number 5 batter a lot of his career. Sam Northeast obviously left. To begin the season, they'd been struggling for a number 3, and Kieran Carlson eventually, I think, was just like, I'm the captain, I'm one of the best players, I'll bat 3. And in that first game batting 3, I think he scored 180 something. Or it might have even been a double 100. Basically, he scored runs as soon as he moved himself to 3. Glamorgan had barely had a 3 get past 30 all year. I think they tried Zain Al-Hassan and Sean Dixon. But Kieran Carlson went in and really, really changed the game. And I think it's really changed the sort of prospects of Glamorgan's season, him going up to 3. It just changed the feeling of their team. Because if they've got after him Colin Ingram and Ben Kellaway, and neither of them you'd want to put at 3. I mean, Colin Ingram's good enough, he could do. But anyway, Kieran Carlson making that adjustment, making that, I'm going to take this on my shoulders and bat at 3, did a lot. And then lastly, another Notts batter who I thought deserved a little bit of credit was Ben Slater. Again, he just had a big innings where he scored 180. I can't actually remember which of the Notts' fixtures that was in. It could also have been in that Surrey game. But Ben Slater scored 178 and 52 not out against Leicestershire. So that was what kind of has boosted his runs up. And he got 50 in the second innings against Surrey. But yeah, Ben Slater, the kind of often forgotten opening pair of Hasipa Mead, but he's actually been the sort of the superior of the two this year. And yeah, kind of all power to him, and he deserves a little shout out. And sort of speaking of people who deserve a little shout out and will be getting a good amount of praise this episode, it's Ethan Bamber. He is a standout bowler for me for the last 2 weeks in Division 1. And he just got his county cap for Warwickshire, having only joined last year, which is a kind of an impressive performance in and of itself. But in the 2 games that Warwickshire have played in the last sort of 3 rounds of fixtures, if you will, he got 2 for 46 in the first innings against Yorkshire, 4 for 50 in the second innings against Yorkshire, then against Glamorgan, 3 for 72 and 5 for 48. So, roughly that's, not roughly, that's 14 wickets, and runs is probably around 200. So that in a 2-game span is incredibly impressive. I think just by the sound of it and everything I've heard about from people about Ethan Bamber, he's just a great professional, a great cricketer, works super hard at his game. And I'll be honest, he's someone I was wrong about a bit. When he joined Warwickshire, I didn't quite see the vision. I didn't quite see the logic of a guy who hadn't done brilliantly in Division 2, playing for Middlesex, and Warwickshire were needing bowling, and he came in, and I didn't see the vision. And I was wrong. And again, you have to hold your hands up in these situations. I was totally wrong about him. He's had a brilliant stint at Warwickshire, and he's become very quickly one of their most important players. And last year he had to kind of run the attack with Oliver Hammond-Darby and Chris Rushworth being out with injury a lot of the year, and people like Michael Booth, and there was a lot of bowlers coming and going. Ethan Bamber's maybe best ability is that availability, and it's a classic cliche, but he really, really does stay available. And lastly, this might be the most surprising pick in a way, because I don't think many people see him as an all-rounder. But once I read out his stats from the last few weeks, I think people will understand why. It's Simon Harmer for Essex. So Simon Harmer very much seen as one of the best bowlers in the sort of the county game. But just in the last few weeks, he's really boosted his batting a lot. So yeah, over the course of this season, he's averaged 54 with the bat, 327 runs, and a high score of 80 not out. And that 80 not out happened in their game against Hampshire. He's also, as he often does, taking wickets pretty regularly. And again, on these wickets, early season where not many spinners are getting wickets, he's taken 14 wickets, an average of 30, and an economy of 2.85, and bowling a lot of overs as well. And again, for early season pitches, not something you'd see very often. There is some other all-rounders who probably deserve this, and they're probably more your typical all-rounder. George Hill springs to mind. He's had a really good couple of weeks. And there's a few others who I'm probably missing off the top of my head right now. But I think there was no one else who's really, really stood up. I think Craig Overton's another one, and he scored some runs the other day. So maybe I'm being harsh on Craig Overton, is that maybe he should be in this all-rounder. But I think I was just surprised by the fact that I saw Simon Harmer was averaging above 50 this year. Oh, and another one, Ben Green. Ben Green, having said that, his batting this year he's not scored any runs for Leicester. So his bowling has been doing a lot of heavy lifting. Anyway, I think that was more of just a statistical thing I found interesting, that Simon Harmer was actually just having a really, really good all-round season for Essex. And that's really, I think, for me, very important for Essex going forward. Right, on to, again, the bit I always enjoy, arguably the most, and sort of enjoy making out of these videos, is the County Chat 12. If you've not watched this show before, and this is your first time, firstly, welcome. Thank you for coming along for the ride. But we do the County Chat 12. And in essence, it's basically like an all-star for the whole season. So it's not just off this 3 weeks. It's kind of a rolling list. So you can stay on it for multiple weeks, and how you perform in the weeks before does matter. So to just go straight through it, we've got Ben Slater and Ben Duckett on the top of the top of the list. Ben Duckett has been batting 3 for Nottinghamshire. I do realise that. I was struggling to pick between him, Dan Hughes, Dom Sibley. And I think like Kieran Carlson, Joe Clark, all of these guys deserve spots in the middle order. So Ben Duckett has moved up to where he plays, admittedly for England, so I don't think it's unfair to suggest he's an opener. I've already talked about him, 500 runs in his games he's played so far. Ben Slater has been the sort of model of consistency, but yeah, it's two new openers in the list, which is fun. So the meaning they've got their one Roman numeral next to them, and then yeah, the people who dropped off the list is Jake Weatherald, and then the other opener from last week was James Rue. This was also around the time that the England squad had come out, so people were kind of talking, would James Rue open the batting and all of those sort of things. James Rue shouldn't open the batting and won't open the batting for England, but it was a bit of a mention. So Jake Weatherald fallen off the list. For him, it's just because he had a couple of failures at Sussex, well, not failures, just lower scores at Sussex, and I think the same in the game against Essex just gone. So it's more of a nature of that than it is the kind of he's had a poor season. He had a really, really good stint here at Leicestershire. As I just mentioned, and I've been giving him shout outs throughout, but I've also given him the captaincy for this week. First time it's not been Ollie Robinson, who also dropped off the list, but he has been brilliant for Glamorgan. Glamorgan have been the standout team, as you can see up there. And yeah, I think he just deserves a lot of praise. And I think he maybe, like Glamorgan is a smaller county, he doesn't get a whole heap of it. So here you go on the county chat, getting your flowers, Kieran Carson, because he's had a brilliant year. He's led them superbly. Glamorgan are up in third, and it's brilliant. And he's scored a lot of runs, and I think he's been a big part of it. Speaking of people who sort of stayed on the list and are sticking around the list for a long time, Joe Clark, he's the top run scorer so far in the division. I could be wrong, but I think he's on something like 700 runs. Yeah, 748 runs. It's a 14-game season. So if you think about it, like add another match on and then double that. If he did that, he'd be scoring the most runs by anyone by such a long way. That's the kind of season he's having, and all the praise that comes with that. Tom Abel. Again, speaking of people having very good seasons, I think he's second in that run scoring charts. I don't want to give myself credit, but I've been calling myself at the ones I've got wrong, so I think I can give myself this. I think I saw Tom Abel at this point, and seeing what he's averaged over the course of his career, his batting is so far above his average of the sort of mid-30s. And I said this year that I just saw these next few years, him without the captaincy, without that burden, he will just be able to focus on his batting and score buckets of runs. He's currently on 696 runs in those 6 matches. So again, is well on track for a well above 1,000-run season. And yeah, all of that from number 5 is quite impressive, but I think that's becoming more of a thing and a bit of a trend you're seeing in county cricket. It's openers scoring less runs and middle order players scoring a bit more. People like Saif Saib, think about that last year. James Rue, he's actually had a bit of a leaner patch, but this is a leaner patch compared to sort of James Rue's lofty standards. He still scored 478 runs so far this season, an average of 47, or 48 if you're being generous and rounding up. You kind of always know what you're going to get from James Rue, and to say that of someone as young as he is, I think is the kind of amount of credit you have to give to him. Obviously, he'd be wearing the gloves in the County Chat 12. And this is, again, more people who've just been on the list all year and have just had a good start to their year. Matt Critchley, again, hasn't done a huge amount actually in the last few weeks. But he actually, at the end of the day, he is a really, really good cricketer, and he's already had a really good start to the year. With the bat, 416 runs, average of 52. And with the ball, I think he's still sat on 8 wickets, but he got them all in basically one fell swoop, because he got 5 wickets at the beginning of the season. But yeah, in his 54 overs, he's taken 8 wickets at an average of 22. So just quite frankly, as an all-rounder, it's quite tricky to get past that. It's a really, really impressive season. And yeah, again, kind of all power to him. And speaking of kind of all-rounders, or someone who's kind of become very much an all-rounder this year, is Craig Overton. Craig Overton, again, someone who's been on the list pretty much all season. Not pretty much all season. He has literally been on the list all season. He is currently averaging 51 with the bat, scoring 415 runs. Actually, just out of coincidence, he's 1 run behind Matt Critchley there. Average of 51, 200s, 150. And then, needless to say, Craig Overton, he got picked for England as a fast bowler. He's 4th in the wicket-taking tallies. He's average of 22. His economy is 2.61. And I was speaking to Harry again, and I think in another era of county cricket, in England cricket, he would be back in the frame for England call, obviously, because how many fast bowling all-rounders who also field in the slips will average 52 with the bat and average 22 with the ball in the start of a season. It's not many, and I'm not really saying Craig Overton should be in the Test setup. I'm just being like, it's a funny thought that in yesteryear that wouldn't even been a question. Someone we've mentioned already today, Ethan Bamber. Shout out to him. Had a great start to his year. his batting has actually always been a surprise for me. He averages 25 this year, but this year it's been his bowling. He's the top of the wicket-taking charts, 29 wickets and averages 22. He's bowled so many overs for Warwickshire, 220. By the looks of it, it's the most I can see by about 20. I think Craig Overton's the closest. He's just been a workhorse at Warwickshire and been a big part of them doing well. And he should get all the respect he gets for that. Sam Cooke is second in the wicket-taking tallies. It's kind of a simple way of looking at it. Sam Cooke has got 27 wickets. He's averaging 19 this year. He's actually got a bit of a higher economy than he often does. It's 3.10, but again, that shot 3.1, if you will. That shows just how good he is, if that makes sense. That's a high economy. I think you know what you're getting with Sam Cooke, and I think people who know their county cricket know how good he is in essence. And lastly, within the kind of 11 of the County Chat 12, Carl Abbott, 26 wickets at an average of 18, 2.46. If you've watched this show enough times, you'll get bored by me talking about Carl Abbott. Carl Abbott being at Hampshire is being much the only reason Hampshire are even a vaguely competitive side. And Jake Lehman, as we're about to get onto, is another reason for that. Jake Lehman has had a really, really good start to his stint in county cricket. And bear in mind, this is kind of like a permanent move for him. It's a really good for him, 559 runs. He's just scored his first 100 over the weekend. He's averaging 62, but he's just been a consistent force of just getting runs in county cricket. All power to him. I thought he deserved to be on the list and get his first Roman numeral. So as you can see, here's some honourable mentions. Dan Hughes and Dom Sibley have been two good opening batters. They both just missed off the list slightly. George Hill, I think, was the closest to getting that 12 spot over Jake Lehman. George Hill, I'm a huge fan of his bowling, but his batting's also been pretty good this year. Dan Lawrence, you kind of find him always in and around these lists. He scores a lot of runs at the Oval, and his off-spin is always a good option. Ben Green, as I've mentioned, his bowling's been great, but his batting's just limited himself a little bit as an all-rounding option. Simon Harmer, again, in a world where we sort of be forced to pick a spinner, I'd probably put Craig Overton up to 7, Bamber up to 8, and then stick him Simon Harmer in at 9. But Matt Critchley, I think, just at the moment is still providing maybe a touch more value. But that's what now I sort of said that and showing Simon Harmer as a sort of standout all-rounder. Hard to say. Tim van der Hoekten, and I could have easily said Ryan Hadley here. Those fast bowlers have been unbelievably good for Glamorgan, and shout out to them, basically. Craig White, Yorkshire, he's been leading the attack brilliantly over there and continues just to plug away, take wickets at a low average and a low economy. One of those county cricketers who I just love, basically. Always have. Cricketers of his kind of ilk, if you will. Where is he on the sort of wicket-taking stats? George Hill is above him, but 20 wickets at an average of 20 and an economy of 2.49. Miguel Pretorius, brilliant for Somerset. You kind of know what you're going to get from him at this point. Seamus Nater, kind of the same. Brilliant for Essex. Sonny Baker, just been put into the England list and kind of responded with another fifer. So that was great for him. And then these guys are all fall into honourable mentions as well, but they've all just dropped off the list this week. But we've actually kind of had our biggest turnover, if you will. Jake Weatherald, I'm pretty sure he's heading home at this point, so he kind of won't re-enter the list, but he had a sort of mixed finish to his season. Jamie Smith his form's just dropped off a little bit. He had a remarkable start to the year, but for me, it was as simple as Kieran Carson's done brilliantly, Ben Duckett's done brilliantly. There just wasn't a space for him in that lineup. Tom Price, unfortunately, with Pricey, it's injuries again for him. He's been ruled out for the last few games for Sussex, and hopefully we'll be seeing him in the pitch of sort of the second half of the season. Ollie Robb, I think, again, if you watch him bowl for Sussex, he's been brilliant, but it's just a case of the wickets haven't been consistently flowing in. So again, you can't put him above Carl Abbott, you can't put him above Sam Cooke or Craig Overton, and then Ethan Bamber's last few weeks has just rocketed him up the leaderboards. And similarly for Henry Crocombe, all power to Henry Crocombe, but I think it was always a surprise he was sort of on the list for as long as he was, just purely off the amount of overs he bowls and all of those sort of things. Anyway, this episode has kind of run quite far, so I'm actually going to call it here. But I hope you've enjoyed, and that's sort of the County Chat update show for Division 1. If you have enjoyed, make sure you're leaving a subscribe, follow, a like, wherever you may be listening to or watching from. I really appreciate it. If you've got any thoughts, maybe I've missed something about your county, or maybe I missed a player off, make sure to drop a comment. I'd love to have a bit of discourse with people and just chatting county cricket, because I think there's not enough done and not enough chat made about county cricket. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the video. There'll be the Vision 2 version of this coming out very soon. I'll be about to record it myself to get you a little sneak peek behind the scenes. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you had a great day, or if you're about to start a day, I hope you have a great day. I've been the County Chat, and thank you very much for watching.